Hey guys, I had a lot of people send messages asking and requesting if I could do a video um, talking about the Colorado shooting. If you don't know anything about the shooting, just Google Batman movie shooting, and basically the gist of the story is that someone went into one of the Batman premieres and just started shooting people, and there's very young victims, and a lot of people got hurt, and it's just a horrible mass shooting. Now, I want to talk about a bunch of different things in the video. Before I do, I'd like to say that I feel horrible for any of the families that have to go through something like this. It's horrible for anyone to be hurt for any reason at all, but the worst part of this is that people go to enjoy themselves in a movie. You go with your family in a movie and you have to deal with a real life horrible situation like this. It scars people mentally, for the lifetime in some cases. And of course, all the families actually lost someone in their family. That's even worse. I believe the youngest victim was only 3 months old or something. There's a lot of details I'd rather not get into because honestly, it's depressing. I excuse me. I don't watch a lot of the news. A lot of people say you should watch news because you have to know exactly what's going on all the time around you. I think it's good, and that's why I do still watch the news occasionally. But I don't like watching it all the time because it gets depressing. There's a lot of stuff that goes on every single day of our lives all around the world, and a lot of it's bad. I don't necessarily want to always know about it. I get to be emotional in a lot of ways, and you hear a bad story about someone, and it kind of gets you in kind of a down mood. Uh, on the flip side of that, you shouldn't be ignorant and walk around and think everything's awesome all the time either. But for me personally, I don't like learning about stories like this too often because it does. I think about it a lot. I dwell on it, and it puts me in a bad mood or a sour mood or sad, depression, stuff like that. The fact of the matter is that every single thing bad that happens, people want to figure out ways to make it better, to learn from it. I saw a really nice comment, like a logical comment from someone on, I believe, Weapons Education's video, and it said something along the lines of, because he did a video talking about the same thing. I think it was something like because of 9/11, we have beefed up airport security. I'm trying to think what the first part it was, but it was along the lines of these events happen like this, and it helps us to learn how to prevent these things in the future. And I think that's good. I think in this specific case, I don't want to get into details because I don't want to be wrong about something. But apparently, he came in from one of the outside exits. It's not like he just came in like a normal patron would come into the movie. And you might say like, okay, well, maybe put alarms on these doors and make sure they're locked at all times. Figure out exactly how he had access to the building and better it for next time so that this can perhaps prevent this issue in the future. That's a good thing. That's a logical, way to attack the situation. In essence, though, my feelings on the thing is that no matter what you do, there'll always be a way. If there's a will, there's a way. That's just the truth of the matter. Is that no matter what you do, you can't prevent things like this from happening. You can certainly lower the chances of it happening, which is good. And yes, by all means, if you can figure out a better way to prevent this next time, that's fine. But things like this will happen. This is not, unfortunately, this is not the last mass shooting we'll ever see. I don't know if there'll be one later today or if it'll be 6 years from now. But there'll be another huge, horrific mass shooting, some lunatic that goes somewhere in public, kills a bunch of people. It'll be very sad. It'll be in the news. Everyone will talk about it. And then we'll go back to living our lives. Every day things like this happen. And I don't want to belittle the story or make it seem like nothing because it's a huge tragedy and obviously a lot of people are involved. What I'd rather not see happen is that people see this story and then next week a movie comes out and they go, no, I don't want to go to the movie theater because you just heard what happened. I mean, God forbid, what if we go to the movie theater and someone comes in there and shoots us up? You can't live in fear. If you really think about all the dangers and all the possibilities of things that can happen to us every day, people as an animal are very susceptible to death. There's a lot of things that can kill us in a lot of different ways. Think about the thousands of airplanes flying over us. At any time, one of those airplanes can have a problem and fall on us and crash. Every time you get in the car, there's thousands and thousands of other automobiles around you. 2,000 to 3,000 pounds going 60 to 100 miles an hour on the highway. They're all little death traps. You know, if you really think about everything bad that can happen, you'll never leave your home. In fact, you won't even want to be in your home because you could die a million different ways in your house. You can't live like that. Obviously, you don't want to live in fear. That's not a good thing either. You want to try to be logical about things. You want to, what I get out of this story is just to try to be more aware of your surroundings. You don't have to be paranoid. That's the extreme of this, is to constantly be paranoid and to load up, you know, with 100 rounds of ammo and 3 guns next time you go to the movie theater just in case something like this happens. I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest that if you are a gun owner, a responsible gun owner, keep doing what you're doing. Okay? It'd be nice if there was more of a possibility of that kind of a person with that good mindset to be in a situation like that. And in this case, there was no one there that had like a concealed carry gun. There was no, you know, good people with guns in the area when it happened. It just happens to be that way. The biggest problem I see here is that obviously with any public shooting or any kind of gun-related accident, there's a lot of people out there that just say, that's it, we got to get rid of guns, look what's happening to our world, you know, around us. And you have to think about their perspective and why an anti-gun person might think something like this. There's a lot of anti-gun people out there. Some of the reasons that people are anti-guns, first of all, if they had a personal situation, if you, let's say your father got shot and killed in some freak accident, or your son or daughter or a cousin, or even like, you know, a neighbor, they got shot in a drive-by. That's something that happened in your life that is always going to be in your mind and will always give you a bad view of guns. Okay. Another thing is the media. Obviously, when you turn on the news and you hear about shootings every day, that's another thing that just pounds into your mind that guns are bad. They kill people. Okay. Most anti-gun people don't own guns. They don't handle guns. They don't see them. Think about the millions of people, and yes, there are millions of people in America. I know a lot of people in other countries think that we all have guns and all love them, but that's not the truth. It's the first thing from the truth. There's millions of people in America who have never seen a gun. The only time they ever even hear the word gun or see an image of a gun is in an action movie, and that's when the bad guy is holding it up against someone's head and using it in a threatening manner. So that's the only exposure they ever have to guns. There's people who are born, live their life, and die, and they never once need to see, touch, or experience guns. That's just a fact. So those type of people, they hear the news and they hear a story like this, and they say, well, why does this person have a gun? The answer isn't get rid of the guns. The answer is trying our best to control people with disorders and mental instability is the best way to put it, because if we had no guns, that same individual would have created a bomb. Apparently he booby-trapped his house and set up bombs in his home too. So, and he took advantage of using a gas canister in this case too. So if you take the guns out of this equation, he could have accomplished a very similar act with a bunch of knives or even a baseball bat. You know, heck, there was a story a couple years ago, a guy in the city, he was completely insane, and he ran around with a brick and just smacked people randomly, like in the head with a brick on the street, and attacked them. That had nothing to do with guns, but that was obviously a horrible experience that someone had to take care of. Obviously, the answer is not to blame guns. I think Jeff Cooper had a quote on something along the lines of like, a gun's not a weapon, your brain's the weapon, a gun is just a tool. And he had a bunch of genius quotes and all logical, all very smart, you know, extremely smart guy, obviously, and a hero in the gun community within itself. But, you know, I believe in that too. Obviously, the guns aren't to blame. Yes, if we got rid of all guns, I guarantee that gun-related crime would go down, simply because there's no guns to create the crimes. But again, I want to stress the point to people who are anti-guns that laws only affect people who follow the law, and 100% of the time, criminals do not follow the law, and they'll always, even if we ban guns, there'll always be guns around. There's no literal way to get rid of all of them all the time. Let's say America says no more guns. That's it. Destroy every gun we see. Make huge penalties and fines for guns. That's fine. The rest of the world will still make them, and they'll still get in our country, and the bad guys will still have them. You can't possibly take them all away. But by making laws that are more strict, it makes it much harder for a good person to protect himself legally. it's a tough nut to crack because it's something that it's horrible and I feel very bad for the situation. And I just know it's very factual and a good assumption that this will happen again in a different medium. I think what's really bad in this case is that because it happened at an action movie, it caused much more panic and confusion than I think if it were just happened like anywhere else. I mean, think about this. You're in a movie theater. You got surround sound. You got guns and stuff going off in the movie theater. Someone breaks in, throws, a gas canister down, starts shooting people. I would imagine a lot of those people thought this was some kind of elaborate part of this movie. It's a premiere movie of a major thing, millions of dollars involved. Hey, cool. They picked our theater, to do like a live acting type thing. I mean, short of going to see a play where someone gets shot on stage and someone uses a real gun and kills someone, I mean, this is about as close as you get to people not realizing that it's real until it's too late, So it's an interesting way that it happened, as opposed to, say, a school shooting or something else where you hear a gunshot and it's extremely panicking. But in a movie theater, particularly in an action movie, to hear a gun go off, your first instinct might be, wow, great effect. Not so much, wow, we should get out of here. And obviously, you throw in the factor that it is a dark movie theater. It's hard to see, causes more panic, more confusion. It's hard. And, a lot of people may say, well, more people with guns. Honestly, there's a lot of people out there who mean well, and they do carry guns, and they I want to protect my family, that kind of thing, but they don't have the time or the effort to devote in using and learning how to handle that gun properly. And honestly, in this specific scenario, I could see it being very common if some average person, I'm not talking about someone who goes to gun sight and trains and is like all tacked out. I'm talking about the average guy that says, yes, I'd like to protect my family. He goes to the store, he buys a gun, he buys ammo, puts it in his closet, locks it up, and forgets about it. And that's all too common. There's a lot of people who do that. They're what we consider good, Americans, and they just want to protect their family. We're totally for their rights and stuff, but at the same time, they're not as responsible as others in handling that gun, and they may not be able to use it properly or efficiently. Now, imagine that individual who maybe has the gun on him. He's with his family. He wants nothing more than to protect his own loved ones. But in a dark theater, in that kind of panic, I can imagine some good person accidentally shooting other innocent people just in the whole heat of the moment. Anything that's moving, your guns point at because you're protecting your family. Maybe your wife, your kids, and your brain's not all there, and it's very dark. There's a lot going on, people running around, all this noise, gunshots. Who knows? Maybe you, as the concealed weapons holder, with your gun, all you want to do is help. But maybe you accidentally kill some poor lady, or God forbid, some kid, and that's something you have to live with for the rest of your life. That all I want to do is help, but that can eat you alive mentally. And I'm sure there's a lot of cases where people with guns have tried to do good too, and accidentally shot innocent people just in trying to help, and that's something they have to live with. There's no answer to this. I'm just making the story a little bit more known. Hopefully you guys can Google it and find out more about it, spread the word. It's always good to be knowledgeable about things like this. Raising awareness is a good thing, but to also let people know that maybe your opinion on it. Perhaps it's not, the answer is not get rid of guns. The answer is try to figure out how to stop these people before this starts, and have an understanding that without guns, you can't take away dangerous things. You can, a chair could be dangerous. You can't, it's just impossible. This story could have very well been that this mental guy ran his car through the front of the theater, and killed 6 kids buying candy at the counter. Does that mean we get rid of cars? No. So, just try to have a logical perspective on the story. I don't like when people blame the media. They say our video games are too violent. I think they blame the movie itself. Like, no, people weren't watching movies like that with violence and guns. They wouldn't think it's real. Look, when you hear a story in the news about someone being raped viciously, do we blame love stories and say, yeah, well, you know what? It's because of these love stories. This guy had an alternative fantasy life about being in love with someone because he watches too many love stories. Of course not. You never hear that. When it's just, if you can, it seems silly if you compare it to other similar situations, you would say, no, why would you blame movies? That has nothing to do with it. In my mind, blaming violent movies and violent video games, I don't think plays a role. That's just my personal opinion. Obviously, there's a lot of violent games out there. I mean, very realistic games where you can get in a car and drive around and kill people and do whatever you want. But it's still the mental capacity of that individual playing. And a lot of people make the argument, well, kids are very influenced by their surroundings. Yes, that's true. But, I played very, very violent games as a kid, and I occasionally still do play very violent games. I love playing Grand Theft Auto 4. I love getting into a car, driving in traffic like normal in the game, and then someone honks or says something, and I veer off the road, and I hit them with the car, and I get out, and I blow up the building and shoot a bunch of random people. Doesn't mean I want to do it in real life. It's a strange way to relieve stress in a game world. And some people say, well, people can't differentiate between a fantasy and reality. That's not the game's fault. That's the individual's fault, or perhaps the surroundings, the parents teaching wrong things, or perhaps not being there to teach at all. Bad influence. There'll always be crazy people. There'll always be mentally ill people. There'll always be bad people, no matter what. The next time you hear a story about someone killing someone and cannibalizing them, are you going to blame Friday the 13th? Are you going to blame the Saw series? Of course not. Why not? Why wouldn't they do that? They blame violent movies and games for things like this, public shootings. Put in comparison, I mean, compare them all. You may say that doesn't make sense. Well, bring that over to gun stuff. That doesn't make sense either. Gun crimes are easily a target, no pun intended, but a target for ignorant people. They may mean well, and there's people who are very anti-gun. And as a pro-gun person, a gun owner, responsible gun owner, my instinct is to go, no, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. But I try to have an understanding of how these people are thinking, and I understand why they think the way they do. I do disagree with them, but I understand their perspective. If you've never held a gun, never seen a gun, never needed a gun, a lot of people, like I said, some people say, well, I need a gun to protect myself. Some people, they never need to protect themselves. They're lucky, that we live in. There's such a diversity in crime. Some people live in places where, your doors are completely unlocked. You might leave your front door open all day long, completely just open to the world. Walk around outside, go to the store, come back. You drive in a convertible, you leave your top off, your radios, everything, like, just you live this lifestyle where there's no worry or very little fear, very little crime. The worst thing that ever happens in your neighborhood is that the guy down the street gets drunk and the cops go there and everyone makes up and hugs and kisses afterwards. And then you have the other extreme where people live in the ghetto, and they live in these crime-ridden places where people have bars, welded on their front door. There's constant fear. You can't walk down the street without being harassed or raped or, just getting your butt kicked, And it's hard for someone who lives in that bad environment to understand the lifestyle of someone in the other environment, and vice versa. There's such diversity in our country that there's so many ways of looking at things, so many perspectives on how we think about life in general, that it's way too hard for us to come together as a group and agree on anything, ever. So there'll always be pro-gun people and anti-gun people fighting. And when something like this happens in the media, and when you hear a story about this, of a public shooting, don't blame guns. No, guns are the fault. It will always bicker and fight about that. But I believe that there's too many pro-life, and I don't mean that in the more common, obviously dealing with babies and unborn pregnancies, obviously pro-life and pro-choice, that kind of thing. Obviously not talking about that, but when I say pro-life, I mean, instead of saying pro-gun, use the term, I don't know, pro-self preservation. I'm pro-self-preservation. I like to stay alive, and it just so happens that guns are the most easy way to defend myself. If I can walk around with a ray gun, well, I shouldn't say that because it's still a gun of forms, but if there was a better way to protect myself, then I would go with that. If I can't have a gun where I live, then I'll have a knife. You do whatever you can. Unfortunately, there are places in your country where you cannot defend yourself with guns, And in that case, if you live in those areas, I would just highly recommend that you try your best to talk to your public officials or get like-minded people together and, power numbers. One person calling up his local police station saying, "Why can't I have a gun?" is not going to help anything. You're just going to harass them, and they'll end up following you and giving you tickets for no reason, I'm sure. But getting groups together, using all the networking you possibly can, going online, looking in classifieds. Hey, I want guns in our state. Who's with me? Don't be some kind of extreme group. Be logical, normal citizens. Come together, as a group in large in numbers. Give your perspective on things to your officials. Talk to people who can actually make changes, and perhaps they will. Maybe they will loosen up your gun laws and make it a little easier for you to get a gun. And that doesn't mean it's easier for criminals to get guns. I still believe in gun laws. I don't think that anyone. I used to think differently. I used to think that, yeah, anyone should go into the store and buy a gun, and as if you're buying gum or as if you're buying a magazine. Why can't we just have guns on the shelf and ammo? If everyone had a gun like the Old West, things would kind of play out, and all the bad guys would end up getting shot by all the good people, and we live in a perfect world. Obviously, it's not perfect. I do think that there should be restrictions on guns, but I think it should be the same as, like, say, alcohol. Like, once you hit a certain age, you can have a gun. I think that, and this is always a touchy subject because there's no perfect answer, and whatever my opinion is doesn't mean that's the best way. It's just my opinion. But I think that there should just be, like a mental test to see if you are stable mentally.